Good Wednesday, everybody. I hope you did really well on your quiz. Remember, if you didn't do as well as you thought you wanted, on your announcements, okay? Now, on your iPad, that means it's over on the left. There's a category that says announcements, but there is a redo form, and you can fill that out and send it to me, and we'll set up a time for you to redo your quiz. You will have to do some sort of activity in order to look at the information again, but I can go through with you individually. We'll talk more about it in daily announcements too. But just a reminder, the form is under announcements in Canvas. Okay, so we're moving on now to Unit 6, Lesson 2. And lesson 2 is physical and chemical properties. I don't know if you've heard of that at all, but by the time we're done, you're going to be able to compare substances based on their properties. And we maybe last lesson just mentioned it briefly. The word property means something that a substance has, an attribute, a way to describe it. You've maybe heard in real life, somebody talks about their property, their house or their car. Okay. Property is something about something. Okay. Sorry, my picture's in the way. All right. So by next week, you're going to be able to define a physical property and a chemical property. Today, we're just starting with physical property, but by the end of the week, you'll be able to do both. And then you'll be able to list common physical and chemical properties. We'll do these several days in a row. A lot more physical properties than there are chemical properties. So just be ready for that. There are multiple physical properties, not as many chemical. Okay. And then you'll be able to list characteristics or things about the properties. And hopefully you'll use those to be able to identify a substance. All right, the standards for this lesson that we're going to get after is that all matter is made up of little particles called atoms. We get into that lesson in a couple weeks, but all matter is made up of atoms. And again, just like last lesson, that you use the appropriate math to be able to gather data and information. And lastly, you can develop descriptions and explanations and predictions. Those standards are true for about every lesson. Okay, each lesson in our book starts out with an engage your brain, kind of a prediction type thing. So let's look at these 4 predictive questions. Liquid water, so think of a glass of water or anything like that, freezes at the same temperature at which ice melts, which is 0 Celsius. Again, in the United States, we use our measuring system, which is Fahrenheit. So that would be 32 degrees Fahrenheit, which equals 0 Celsius. So does liquid water freeze at the same point at which ice melts? What do you think? Okay, answer to yourself, and it is true. Okay, again, that's 32 Fahrenheit or 0 Celsius. How about the second question? A bowling ball weighs less than a styrofoam ball of the same size. Hopefully we'll get that. Okay, that goes back to last lesson with density. Answer is false. Okay, a bowling ball is going to weigh more. It would have more mass. Third question, an object with a density greater than the density of water will float in water. So an object with a density greater than 1, remember the density of water is 1, will float in water. Do we think it will float or do we think it will sink? So the question is asking, will it float? And no, it will not. It will sink. Here's probably maybe a new word for you. Solubility is the ability of one substance to dissolve in another. Do you think that is true or false? And it is true. That is a word we'll look at a little bit today and then further into the lesson. All right, this next question is going to be part of your assignment today. If you were asked to describe an orange to someone who had never seen an orange, so someone who lives somewhere where they've never eaten or seen an orange, what would you tell that person? So you're going to need to be able to describe it and talk about what it is like to a person who's never seen it. All right. Here's an active reading section. Many English words have their roots in other languages. The root of the word solubility is a Latin word solvere, which means to loosen, to break apart. So, what would you say the meaning of solubility is? Well, the book says the ability of a substance to dissolve into another substance. And again, we're going to look at that today and then later in the week. Move me over here, I guess. All right. Physical properties of matter. Physical things that you can use to describe matter. All right. Here is the definition, and you're going to need to know this like as they say, the back of your hand. Okay. It is a characteristic or something about a substance that can be observed by your senses. Think of your five senses, and measured without, that's the key word of the definition, without changing the identity of the substance. So you are able to see it without changing what it is. That is a physical property. There are some physical properties that can be observed, again, just using your five senses. Hopefully, we know our five senses: touch, taste, smell, see, hear. Okay, so these properties can be observed just by our senses: the color of something, the shape, the size, the texture, and the smell. We're going to get into smell later in this week. All right, here is another question that you're going to have for your assignment today when we're done with this PowerPoint. Does observing a physical property, so think back to what we just said about a physical property, change the identity of the substance? And then I'll want you to explain. So if you need to rewatch the video or anything, think about that question. Does observing a physical property change the identity? All right. Physical properties of a substance can change state without changing identity as well. We'll get into states of matter. There's a whole lesson of states of matter, but hopefully you have known those from the elementary. A state of matter: solid, liquid, gas. Okay, so when liquid water, so like a glass of water, turns to steam, like if you would boil it on the stove, or it freezes in ice, it's changed state, but it's still water. So that's a physical property. For instance, you have an ice cube, a glass of water, or gas, a cloud. Okay, so that is a physical property. Okay, where it changes from a solid to a liquid and a liquid to a gas, that is a physical property. Okay, here is the next question that you're going to have on your assignment. Again, I'm just looking for your thought process. I'm worried more that you're doing the questions as I am about right and wrong. I will leave you comments as far as your answers, but I just really want you to try. Okay, so this question is this: describe the physical properties of the objects you see in the photo. So look at all the things in the photo, okay, and think about different properties or different things that you could describe from being in the picture. Okay, again, here are some common physical properties. Density, we just did last lesson. Electrical conductivity, we'll talk more about later in the week. Same thing with thermal conductivity. Solubility, can something dissolve? Malleability, I'm going to give you here in just a second. Luster is how shiny something is. Melting point would be like when ice melts. Boiling point is when something boils. And is it attracted by a magnet? Okay, physical properties of the substance can, often describe how the substance can be useful. So in other words, how we can use it in society. All right. Next question on your assignment for today. Back to density from our lesson that we just finished. Okay. Again, to review, it's the measure of the amount of mass in a volume. So that photo shows oil and vinegar. You might put it on your salad. Okay. The top layer is oil. Okay. The bottom is the vinegar. Describe the density of the vinegar compared to the density of the oil. What is happening that makes them separate? Okay, here's that solubility physical property. Okay, and it is the ability of a substance to dissolve in another substance. So this is Kool-Aid or whatever, and it dissolves in the water. So when it's fully dissolved, the particles of the drink mix will be spread clear throughout the water. You won't see them. Oh, sorry. But if you would let all that liquid evaporate out, so you would sit it outside and all the water would evaporate on a nice summer's day, would you see the solid particles of the drink mix? Would it leave the particles behind? Give me your prediction there. Again, this will all be on a Google Doc. All right, one last property, or not one last property, one of the last ones today is something called malleability. People always struggle saying that word, so maybe try to say it to yourself. Malleability, malleability. Okay, it's the ability of a substance to be rolled or pounded into a shape. So aluminum foil, or just plain aluminum, if you think of a soda can, has that property. So for this question, I want you to name something that's made of aluminum. So think of something made of aluminum and explain why this malleability, the ability for it to be able to roll or pounded, is useful. All right. Last one we're going to talk about today is boiling point, where a substance would boil, bubble up. So this question says, and we're not going to do this on your assignment, we're going to do this one together. Compare what happens when a geyser erupts, like Old Faithful, to what happens when a tea kettle whistles. Maybe you've heard it, your parents, grandparents, whatever, if they have a coffee pot or a tea kettle on the stove and it boils. Okay. So what do we think? Well, they are caused by the release of pressure when the water turns into steam. Okay. So the steam has more pressure than the water. Okay, that is where we're going to stop for today for the PowerPoint. We'll continue on tomorrow. Again, you'll need to go into Canvas. There will be a Google Doc with these few questions on it. I am most worried about effort. Okay, we'll worry about rights and wrongs later, but you need to at least try. Most of you did a really good job on that the last time we did this. So make sure everyone does it. Remember, you open it, make a copy, complete your answers, take a screenshot, and submit. Okay, that is it. And I will end the video right now. Take care.